So to start this app, we have to decide what we want to do first. Remember, one of the things I always talk about is breaking things up into chunks. Don't try to, boil the ocean. Don't try to eat the whale in one bite, whatever analogy you want to draw. We kind of have to choose here. Do we want to start with, the two obvious places is either the UI, where we could build the UI out and throw some sample data without actually hitting any APIs and build the app and then plug in the API later. That's the way we did the first app. Or you could start with getting the networking and getting your data, and then now that you have your data, start building your UI. There's no right or wrong to this. Which way I'm going to choose really just kind of depends on what I have available. If all the data is available, the APIs are up and running already, I may start with the API first. It just depends. And sometimes it depends on kind of what mood I'm in. But either way, you need to pick one and get it working. So since I did the UI last time, this time, let's start with a network. So to do this, I needed some API out there that's online that you could get access to and code this yourself if you wanted. So I Googled around and I found this one, Punk API. I didn't even read this, so I actually don't know who this is, where it came from, why they created it. No idea. But this is for Brewdog's do-it-yourself dog beer recipes. And I thought, well, this will be fun. And what this API does is it gives you a list of beers and the recipes on how you'd brew it yourself if you were into home brewing. As an interesting side note or uninteresting side note, back in my youth when I was just a little bit older than most of you, I got into brewing beer pretty seriously and brewed a lot of beer there for a while. The funny thing is I actually don't like beer, but anyway. So here they got an API. We can go out and see the documentation, and this API is comically simple. There's just one API. We will look at others in the course later that have a lot more calls, but this one's very simple, but it's a nice place to start for your first project. And what happens is here, let's just copy this and come over and paste it. And what we see, we got to add something, sorry. So they show this is the endpoint. So this is the root. We talked about that in a previous one. Down here is actually where it gets more interesting. It's beers, and then you can add some other parameters. So if we go over here and I just add beers, we get back all the beers in the system. And there's really not that many. And to make sense of it, I'll just copy it all and then go to JSON Editor Online, where I was actually looking at something different, actually looking at an API that we're going to use for your project 4. But anyway, we're interested in the demo project. So I'll paste it over here, hit copy. You see it moves it over here. And so what do you see on the beer? Each one of these has an ID. For our purposes, that's not going to matter. It's got a name of the beer, a description of it. It's got an image that goes along with it. When whoever it was that's brewing this first brewed. It's also got some tips if you want to brew it yourself. And then it's got lists of information about the ingredients. And then the one I think we're going to use is, where to go? Food pairing. So they make some recommendations on what food this beer will go well with. So I thought it'd be fun to use this. So let's get started. First thing I need to do is I want to create my model object. And my model object, I'm going to call it beer. And let's pluck out, I don't usually start with everything I want. I just pick a couple real basic properties to make sure everything's working. So let's do that. So let me move this off the side. Let's come over here. And actually I think let's go ahead and create a couple packages just to organize our code a little bit. So I'm going to go new package. And we'll create one model. So for the model, new Kotlin class, and this is all, you guys have done all this before. New class called beer. And yes, it's in source control. And let's go ahead and add some properties. So what do we have again? We had, let's just go grab name and tagline for now. So I'll go val name. It is a string. So this API is always going to return a value for name, but maybe maybe there could be a problem someday and it wouldn't. So I'll go ahead and make it optional. Val, what was the other one? Tagline. Let me look here. Yeah, tagline, and again optional string. And I want these names to match, just so that it does all the mapping for me automatically. And usually you'd see these brackets, but since we're not writing any code, you actually don't need them. So I'll just go ahead and delete them. Typically I would. So now we have our class. The next step is to get our API defined. So let's go and create another package. Let's keep all that separate too. In most of my personal projects, I do tend to make liberal use of packages to kind of group everything together. So let's go new package, and I'll call this one API. We'll keep our API there. So a lot of times on the API, you'll kind of give it a name that's similar to where it came from. You don't have to, but in this case, it's called Punk API. So what I'll do is we'll do it as Punk API. Oh, we got a problem. We haven't done any of our includes yet. Let's get that set up. So sorry, trying to go through this fairly quickly so you don't have to spend too much time watching me do the same things you've already seen. I'm going to go over here. Give me a second. I'm going to copy what I want. Let's go over here to resources. Oh, sorry, not resources. Gradle, our module, and I usually put a couple steps in spaces in here just so that I can break things up a little bit. These you're all familiar with. You've seen them before. These are the stuff for retrofit and for coroutines. Then there's one other that we're going to use called Picasso. So I want to go ahead and throw that in there now, and I'll explain what that is later. But Picasso will make your life dramatically easier when the time comes to work with images. Now that I've added this, go ahead and do a sync. Let Gradle do its thing. And now we have all our dependencies downloaded, added to the project. So now we can go back to our API, and let's do a new Kotlin file, and we'll call it Punk API. Good as anything. Okay, stop asking me. Okay, so on this, if you remember from last time, this is where we define our endpoints. Just like last time, we're only going to have one endpoint on this project, but you certainly could define many others. And if you remember, we do it as an interface. So we do it as Punk API, and then get beers, and it's going to return a list of beer objects. And now with my function there, I do need to define, what is the path to it. So if you remember, let me go over here and grab it. The full path is that. But we'll set up the, we could stick the full path in here, by the way, when I do the @get. I believe it would still work, but usually there's multiple APIs that you're using in an app, so you'd want to set up your root in retrofit and then just say here's the end part that's specific to this call. So that's how we're going to do it. And the end part is, of course, beers. And I'm going to go ahead and just leave this in here, just so that if I have any questions about it later, that I could see here's what it's going to look like when I make the call. Just leaving the anyway, good enough. Okay, so now let's create our. I'm trying to think. It's going to do our data adapter. Sometimes I would actually run a test to make sure everything's working, but that would mean I just got to duplicate a bunch of code. So let's go and create the data adapter. So let's go right-click, new, Kotlin class file, and I'll call it beer data adapter. Okay, so on the beer data adapter, this is, its sole job in life is to go get beer, right? Or go get beers from the API. So we'll do class beer data adapter. And let's to set up retrofit, I need to define my root, my base API. So let's do const val base URL equals to, there we go. So there's the root of all of our API calls. I do need to set up the retrofit service. Punk API. And then I need to set it up on my init. So if you guys remember how we did this last time, we'll go val retrofit is oh, it's not popping up to help yet because it hasn't recognized it. So let's give it a second. It'll probably do an auto import. No, if not, let's hurry it along. Okay. So because I'll never remember off the top of my head, I gotta kind of see it as it goes. So then we do builder, and then we set our base. Come on. Oh, no. Got to create one. Create a new builder. On the new builder, we're going to set the base URL. The base URL is base URL. And then we need to add our converter factory. Again, we will use JSON. And of course, it's not going to help me on the, is it JSON converter factory? We'll see if I spelled it right here in a minute. Create. Yep, okay, yeah, picked it up finally. It's always a test of memory. And then it is build. Okay, so we've created retrofit and told it that, you know, here's the base URL. You're going to use JSON. So now I need to just kind of tie, create a service that uses the interface. So service equals retrofit dot create, and it will be the punk API class Java. Now that we have our init in place, so we've created our service object, now I can just start using it, and all the magic of retrofit happens. And remember, it needs to be a suspend function because it's going to run in the background. Get beers. And now we just say, we're just going to return, oh, whoops, data type. Get beers returns a list of beer. And that is just going to return service.getBeers. So again, I went through that pretty quick. This should all be review. You've seen it before. The second time through seeing it, hopefully it makes it make even more sense. But there you go. Okay, so now we have a data adapter. So we have defined our service, right? We have created a data adapter, and now we got to use it. So to use it, remember the data adapter gets used from a controller. So let's go ahead and create our controller, and I'm just going to throw it in here. We'll call it beer controller. And on our beer controller, there's a, I think, yeah, let's do it as a, sorry, what I'm debating on here is, do I want to actually create an instance of a beer controller or do it as a singleton again? And I'm just going to stick with it as a singleton. That worked pretty good as a design choice. And the part that I really care about right now is, just doing the refresh method, if you remember. That's what I called it last time. I tend to use that name a lot because what I like about it is I'm telling the controller, go refresh your data. And whoever calls it doesn't have any idea how you're refreshing it. Are you hitting an API? Are you hitting a local database? Are you hitting flat files, etc.? And it shouldn't matter. It should just be able to call refresh. So let's create a variable to hold the beer. So var beers, which will be equal to a list of list of beer. And then let's create a, actually no, let's just do everything now. When it is size, val size is an int, a get, return beers dot size, and then let's go and do our fun get beer at position. And so one thing you may notice, sometimes in the videos I call it at position, sometimes I say at index. That's just iOS versus Android. In Android, they tend to say in your lists, it's a position, whereas on iOS, you tend to use the term index, and I sometimes use one in place of the other. And it will return possibly a beer if it can find it. So if index is greater than or equal to 0, equal to, not index, darn it, position, and position is less than beers dot size, return beers position, else, and we don't need the else because it's just going to be a return. So if we get to this line, return null. Okay, somewhere here, oh, right there, too many brackets. So we're just going to check, make sure the index is in range. If it is, we return the beer. Otherwise, we're going to return null. Okay, so the last one, let's do refresh. So refresh, remember, we're going to make this call, and it's going to run in the background using coroutines. And I need to pass it in an error handler, or sorry, an error closure that says, here's what you do if there's an error. And also I need to pass in a closure block that says, here's the code you should run after this network call is done. So error handler is coroutine exception handler, and then the completion block, PLET completion, is just simply whatever we want it to be. So I'm going to do the same as I did last time, where I just say it's a empty function, right? So it takes no parameters, returns no data, just a block of code we're going to execute. And then it's up to this block of code to go back to the controller and figure out what it needs to do. Okay. So to run the network call, I need to do val main PIVIT activity job, and it is a new job. And I need a coroutine scope. Oh, I tell you, if I could type better, spell that as routine scope. There we go. O-U-T-I. There we go. Scope. And again, that's just all cookie cutter. You type that in all the time, and it's pretty much always the same. So now we go to coroutine scope dot launch, and we're going to pass in the error handler. And now we write our code. Well, what do we want to do? Well, we want to say that our member property, beer, is equal to the beer data adapter new instance dot get beers, and then run the completion block. So pretty straightforward. Looks almost identical, I would guess, to the code that we did in the earlier project. Now that we have that done, we can finally test it. So it took a while to get to this point, but we're here. So let's go to our list fragment, and let's just do it on view create. Let's just go ahead and say, actually, you know what? Let's create an update UI. I'm positive I'm going to want one. So let's do an update UI, and then let's call update UI after view did create. At some point, may want to do like, check for network connection and all that, but you've seen that, so I'm going to skip it for now. So here, let's get our controller. So let's just say, whoops. Beer controller, create a new instance, dot, oh shoot, I gotta go through and define my, hold on. We gotta define our error handler next. I'm gonna go copy that from a different project, hold on. Give me a second to go find another project that has it. Okay. There we go. Okay. There. Again, you've seen all this, so you don't need to see me type it in again. But here's kind of a very generic one that I created for the example of your homework assignment. And I just created a function that returns a new instance of a coroutine exception handler. It just says error and then spits stuff out. This should probably be moved to a strings, well, not probably, this should be moved to a strings file, but I'm not going to make you watch me do that. Otherwise, it just pops it up. Okay, so now I can say beer controller dot, oh, why isn't that giving me dot refresh? Where did we make a mistake? Probably didn't import it yet. No? Okay, let's go back and look. Is there something wrong with our beer controller? Fun refresh. Nope, don't see any problems. It's part of our model package. Let's make sure that's in here. Sometimes it doesn't get odd. Yeah, I hadn't gotten, rather than wait on it, I'm just going to go ahead and import it directly. Why can a package not be imported? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, always had. Let's just do a build here and see. That error doesn't really make any sense. Oh, because it got an input. Okay, it got it up here. Sorry, I should have added beer controller. Never mind. Or did dot star. Right? You guys understand how that works? How imports work? So yeah, it was just my fault. Being dumb. Okay, so, oh, beer controller. There's why I can't create a new instance. Beer controller is a singleton. Ha! Okay. All right, you guys remember that? It's a singleton. And then let's do create error handler, which gives us our new error handler, and then we'll create the block here to do something. And what we want to do later, we'll refresh our recycler view, but we haven't created all that yet. So for right now, I'm just going to do log.d beer got data, so I can find it. And then I think if I just, well, do we have it? No, it's private, isn't it? Did I make it private? I did. You know what? For right now, let's go ahead and we'll just make this public real quick, and then we'll change it back to private later. Again, I just want to test to make sure that we're getting our data. There. So let's go ahead and run our app. And pull up the little run. Oh, got a compile error somewhere. What was that? Type mismatch. Oh, huh, okay. So I'm not going to be able to do it in line here. Let me explain what's going on. We have to create an alert dialog, I have to give it context. To get the context, because we're in a fragment, you have to pull it back with asking for the activity. But the activity is actually a optional. So there's a chance, even though this would never ever happen, technically, in theory, it could, even though it never will. So I have to return back, right, an optional. So what I need to do here is say val error handler equals create error handler. Sorry, I totally forgot I had to do this. And then say if error handler does not equal null, then we do this. There we go, right? Because I have to check to make sure that it's not null, so that in this block of code it knows that it's an actual instance and not null. Okay, so now let's run. There, so the app is launching. Oh, okay, so we got an error, and that's okay. I'm actually just kind of hoping at some point we would get an error somewhere so that we could look at debugging it. Oh, okay, well this is simple. No network security config, remember that? Let me go copy it and paste it. Hold on. Go to our manifest, and we need to add it up here. So yep, totally forgot that I need to ask for permission. Forgot to put it in the project. Let's try again. Okay, got data, and then here it's spitting it out. And you'll see it's a whole bunch of instances. So we're not getting the details, but we are getting data back. It's creating beer objects. So I feel pretty good that it's actually working, which gives us a great place to stop. We'll pick this up in the next video.